Okay, now we're gonna add some creative text to our image. So I'm gonna reopen this protester poster we made. So far we've cut out an object or person from a background image. We put it on a different background. Did some basic adjustments to that. We've duplicated it, transformed it. And then we did some layering and some blending modes with our layers. Some layer masks, and now we can add some creative type to it, some creative text. Okay, so there's my image. First thing I'm gonna do is find a creative font online. We could always use, you always go to the type tool here. Hotkey for that is T. I go to the type tool. Hotkey is T. And once that catches up, we can see up here at the top in the control panel we have some of your basic fonts that are installed here. Some of your default fonts, and there's some good ones on there, but if we want to get some that are a little more creative, instead of just coming up here, we can go online and install some more fonts. So I'm going to go to Safari, and I'm going to do a search for free fonts in Google. There's 1001 free fonts. Font Space, I think Font's a pretty good one. And I'm gonna do maybe a medieval font. Might be fun. Since this is a protest image with Guy Fawkes, maybe an old English style font would be fun. Okay, so I'm gonna download this one called Cloister Black. I can check my downloads here. I can actually drag that right to the desktop if I want, or into another folder. I'm going to minimize this. There's my TTF file. That's what we want, is a TTF file. Some fonts have several TTF files with some of the different font styles in each file. And what you want to do is double click on that file. It should open up this window, install font, and then if this window here switches to the example of your font and installed correctly, sometimes there may be problems or viruses associated with some of these fonts, so just be careful. And if I'm working on a flash drive, then I would also want to drag a copy of this font into my flash drive, or maybe into a folder somewhere else on the computer. So if I use it on another computer, I will have to install this font. Okay, so let's go back here to our protester image. I'm gonna go once again to get to the type tool. I click T, or click on the T icon over here, and that should automatically install your new fonts. Cloister Black, so I'm gonna look up here for C for Cloister Black. There it is. And change my font size to 72. Actually, I'm going to make it even larger so I can highlight this font size at the top. I'm going to do 150. Okay. There's my Cloister Black. That only has one option, which is light. Sometimes it has bold, regular, several different styles of that font face. Here's my font size. I have it at 150, and then we have justification. We justify to the left, center, or right. And I'm going to go ahead and type it out here. There's a couple ways you can type it out. You can draw out the text box and start typing within the text box, or you can just click in Photoshop and start typing. I'm just going to click and type this out. Protest. There we go. Okay, then I can click on my Move tool, from my Type tool to my Move tool, and I can move that type wherever I want it, that word. If I want to get back to highlight this word and do some changes, there's a couple ways I can do that. I can go back to my Type tool here, position that cursor within that word. You can see how it changes, and double click and that word is selected. And I can come back down here to my foreground color, double click that, and change the color of my font. Maybe I want something red. Okay, go back to my Move tool and you can see what it looks like. Another way to quickly highlight your text, window, go to the layers window. Okay, over here in the layers window you can see all my image layers that we worked on before, but then at the top here we have that type layer, the word protest. There's my text thumbnail here. If I double click that, that's another way of highlighting the word. And then I can do some changes. Once again, I could change my color if I want. Okay. Well, what if I want to change the size? Once again, I could double click this, come up here and change the size. Another way I could change the size is by just doing the basic transformation. Command T, bring up the bounding boxes for transformation. Hold the Shift key down to maintain the proportion so it doesn't get distorted. Or if you want to distort it, then you can just grab one side or grab the corner and distort it that way. Once again, that's Command T. And hold the Shift key down to maintain my proportions and make that word a little bit bigger so we can add some effects to it. Okay. Go back, select my Type tool here. Apply transformation. Type tool, I can highlight these. Then we can also do some basic text adjustments here, some warps, some text warps. If I click that, then I can select some of these preset warps, and I can adjust each of them here so they're not as extreme. Or they're maybe more extreme if that's what I want. Go, I'm going to do something like this. Okay. Click on my Move tool to see what it looks like, not too bad. Alright, once again that was when I highlight my text. Up here at the top, the control panel, there's a little icon for warping. Okay, back to my Move tool. There it is, looks pretty good. But now I want to add a few more effects. And I can do those with my layer effects. Alright, so I'm looking over here on my text layer for the word protest. Over in this blue-gray area, if I double-click there, it'll bring up some some layer styles that I can add. Some of your basic ones you're probably familiar with is drop shadow. If I click the word, well, these are we click the words, not the box. Click the word drop shadow, then I have all these further adjustments I can do. I can adjust the distance. I can also come out here with my cursor and adjust the distance manually. Okay, I can adjust size, how soft the edges are, how transparent or opaque that drop shadow is. So I want to do some adjustments that makes my word pop out. And what else can we do? There's also a stroke. I could put an outline around my text. I don't really like that, so I'm going to change my mind on that. I'm going to click the box there to take that off. I can do an inner shadow. What an inner shadow does, if I adjust the choke, distance, size, it makes it look like that text is cut out. Makes it look like it's cut out. I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to take the inner shadow out. We can do an inner glow. We can do an outer glow, which makes your text look like it's glowing. If I adjust the size and spread, looks like that text is glowing. We can also click here and change the color to whatever color we want. Maybe it's glowing green. I don't like that effect, so I'm going to take that one off. We can also do a bevel and emboss. What a bevel and emboss does, once we increase the depth here, the size, it makes your text looks like it's popping out in space. Makes it look like it's 3D. There's several different styles up here. The inner bevel, which I think looks pretty good. The outer bevel, so it's sort of popping out from the background. Emboss, pillow emboss, and stroke emboss, which will affect the outline stroke, but we don't have a stroke on there, so we're going to go for inner bevel. I like that one. I was popping off into space. And then there's all kinds of other adjustments you can experiment with down here. We can adjust the angle of the shadows, angle of the shadows, the highlights. We can adjust the, right down here, the strength of those highlights. If I want it really light, not quite so light. The strength of the shadow, really dark or not quite so dark. Okay. And we can also make it from a smooth bevel emboss to a chiseled, harder look, or chisel soft. So there's several versions there. I think I like the smooth for this one. And we can also change the shape of that bevel, the curve of that bevel. So there's different versions here, which all have a slightly different look. So go for your basic one. Alright. Now let's try something else. We do a color overlay, and then we can put a different color, throw a different color over there instead of the red, and then we can sort of blend our color overlay with the existing color by lowering the opacity. We also have these blending modes, just like our layer blending modes we looked at when we overlaid some textures. We can do multiply, overlay. So there's some. So that overlying yellow has an effect on that red text. It's not too bad. I decided I don't want the color overlay. I'm going to try a gradient overlay. Okay, I have some preset gradients. Then I can do lower the opacity so they blend in together. Or I can, once again, adjust one of my blending modes. Darken looks pretty good. Lighten. Overlay. Difference. There's tons of different effects you can do in each of these styles. I think I'm going to go for the color burn. It's not too bad. Maybe the linear burn. Linear burn. And I'm just going to lower the opacity a little so the original red pops through. And okay. Let me zoom out. Take a look at that. F. Not too bad. Now we got some pretty cool effects on that. And I could stick with that. Come back in. It's still editable text even though we have all these effects. I can double click there and still highlight my text, and I could even change my font. Well, maybe I want a different font. Maybe I want a more simpler font. How about Impact's a pretty good thick font. See how that looks. And that's not too bad. Transform it to change the size. There we go. And once again, I'm going to change my font one more time, so I can come over here to my type tool, double click, and find a different font. And let's see. Cool. So there's my font. I want sort of a basic font there. And there we go.